believe we are streaming live on Facebook. And I think you might be on mute. Are you here?
Yeah, I am.
All right, I hear you. Okay.
Right.
So welcome. I'm just going to check to see. Here we are.
We are.
Okay. So I'm going to tag some people too while we're saying hello. Oh, let me turn this down. I can hear us. I'm going to tag Honey. Hi, Heather. Hi, Joel and Tercia. Michael. So welcome, Tatiana, and welcome, MDL. Happy Hump Day. Happy Wednesday.
Hi, everyone. Yay,
So
we made it.
We had a few technical difficulties, but we figured it out. You figured it out. Thank you so much. I'm so happy and honored to have you here today. I'm going to keep looking down and tagging people while I talk for a moment. And I want to let everyone know that this is a sensitive topic today that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about sexual and medical trauma. So if this is something that is triggering for you, uncomfortable emotionally for you, it's something that we want you to know about so that you can have your own consent and choice and empowerment to watch or not watch, engage or not engage. So just out of respect, I want to say that now. Before we dive in and get started. So I'm going to tag just a couple more people. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thank you for having me so very much.
Yes. And so I would love to start with, hi, Steph. Hi, Gina. I would love to start with you telling us all just a little bit about yourself, what you do, what your offerings are like, and how you came to this path of service.
Thank you. So my name is Tatiana Vilarea, and I am a transformational hypnotherapy specialist. And I work with several hypnotherapy modalities, such as regressive hypnosis, quantum hypnosis, and regular cognitive, but suggestive hypnosis is really not my favorite type. And I also developed my own method. So I work with guiding my clients into expanded states of consciousness so we can transform and transmute different limitations towards that living our true potential and having that soul connection, living our mission and purpose. And some of these limitations would be traumas and emotional wounds, deep emotional wounds. So I work with different kinds of trauma. Some of the examples would be childhood and family trauma, transgenerational trauma, sexual trauma, and medical. And how I got into this work was actually because I had medical trauma. And I discovered, and I tried everything under the stars and the sky, in the sky and the sun to heal the trauma that resulted from a routine GYN procedure that is quite popular all over the world now. And that turned into a catastrophe for my whole life, my health, my mental health, my emotional health. And we'll talk more about the details of it later and how and why it happens. But basically, I discovered the power of the expanded states of consciousness and their ability to heal various types of trauma, including the neurological, even the medical trauma from the severe nerves, basically, through those expanded states of consciousness. And this is what brought me to this work. And thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Yes, it's so important. It's so important because I feel like, a lot of us don't even realize the extent to which the trauma has occurred, or even that it even occurred in some ways, as we were talking about just earlier about the membrane sweeping situation with some women as they're preparing to give birth. And a lot of, I've heard as a prenatal yoga teacher, as a Baby and Me yoga teacher, where we talk a lot about birth stories. And I feel that every class that I teach has at least one mom who has a story of trauma of her birth and what she experienced, and that she's willing to share, and who else isn't coming forward I don't know what the numbers are with that, of course, but I
Mm-hmm.
imagine there's several who aren't ready or comfortable to share in a group setting. In fact, I do have some moms who will just pull me aside after class and say, well, wasn't
Mm-hmm.
comfortable talking about it there, but I was very traumatized about A, B, C, and D that happened during my labor and birth experience. And then some who, almost identify with the stories of fear to an extent of, well, thank goodness my life was saved by this situation, when really their life had been put in danger by by what had happened. And then they said they saved the life. And so, sort of, there's some confusion that occurs, a lot of this fear-based interactions. But I would say just the membrane sweeping in itself is such a widely used thing that I'm not saying that like no one should ever do that in any situations, but I feel that it may have happened to me and I can't even prove it. Like I was telling you earlier, in that I feel that I was checked, right? I was 39, almost 39 weeks along. I was checked, which was, so they're inserting their fingers into my cervix and beyond in order to see how far dilated I am at that time, which is really not relevant to anything. Now, the practice I was with did ask for consent for that piece. But then I feel that, what happened was very painful. And then I had a little bit of not bleeding, but a little bit of some stuff started happening, started losing my mucus plug right away, little parts of it and things like that, which, it was just an interesting coincidence of timing, the pain, then the shifting happening and starting to get these practice surges or contractions. It's almost like prodromal labor started right away.
But Gia, didn't the nurse or whoever performed this checkup, didn't they also tell you that, oh, your labor might start very soon?
Yes. And then afterwards there was like, oh, I think you might, I think the next time I see you probably in labor, or I might not see you again, or something where it alluded to the fact that she knew something I didn't know, which, all of these things, none of it was concrete. None of it was direct. None of it was, I can't prove that anything happened. I don't know if that's actually what happened, but I kind of feel like that's what happened. And I know for sure that it happens to lots of women because the doctor will tell them after. So they'll say, oh, well, I did a membrane sweep just now. That's an intervention, so that should be consented, and it's also painful. And so not everybody wants their labor to be intervened with. Many of us do not want any interventions. I was one of those people. I may or may not have received one without my consent or knowledge. So this is a good example of how, a lot of us don't even know that we've received some traumas. And then some of us find out afterwards and, hi, Patti. It's intense. It's interesting. And I know this happens in the in medical procedures as well. And things of that nature also.
And I would like to actually talk about what happens with consent and the type of trauma that many women go through, even with consent, but not full consent.
Right. It's not full consent, right? Because only part of the information is shared. Only the fear-based information is shared sometimes, correct? Yes. Steph is saying she needs to release the trauma of both of her births. The birth process is so aggressive here in the US, which, you're in another country, right? Where are you right now?
I live in...
You're all over, right?
Yes, I've been a nomad for the last 3 years, but I've lived on the East Coast for 11 years before I started my nomading journey.
Very cool.
I lived in Washington State and Hawaii. I'm a nomad. Yeah.
Very cool. I love that.
When people ask me where I'm from, I say I'm like a quantum particle. I live nowhere and everywhere at the same time.
You're multidimensional. You're perfect for our group, of course.
So I would like to share a little bit now about the other procedures.
Please.
In addition to the traumas that happen as a result and during childbirth, and the incisions part of it too. So back in 2011, I was scared into a procedure for basically I was watched for a year and a half or so by the doctors, and it got to the point where they said, well, basically they told me that I'm at very high risk with the cervical changes, the cellular changes, like the cancerous sort of developments. And my doctor was white, my nurse was white. They told me that I have to have surgery tomorrow. And so I had that surgery, which is quite popular all over the world. In the States, it's called LEAP. It's that electrical loop procedure that shaves off the cells on the cervix, the abnormal cells in the cervix. In Europe, it's called LETS. And basically, it's the same thing, different letters assigned. And it's usually used for cervical dysplasia and different
I know many people who have had it.
Up to 1 million women in the US alone are diagnosed with various degrees of those cervical changes. And there are different treatments. However,
so Lisa's telling us that she had 2 very premature births that were very traumatic and the LEAP procedure last summer. So we have someone watching. I felt to tag her too. I didn't know why. I feel like that's very relevant, that it's happening of women of all ages, of all walks of life, of all ways. All women are interacting with this, and it comes from HPV, right? That's what it starts with, the human papillomavirus like diagnosis. Is that correct? Or
well, from my understanding, cervical dysplasia most of the times the cervical changes will be connected to the HPV and stuff, but there are also different others. I don't quite know how all the changes are called in English, but basically all the different erosions that then can, the cervical erosion, I think it's called, when they then with viruses and different things change and develop into precancerous and cancerous changes. And so basically I was scared to death. I wasn't offered any alternatives. And I had this procedure. After this procedure, what started happening was I completely had my libido and orgasms shut down. I lost my ability to have orgasms and complete shutdown of libido. I started developing emotional and mental changes like severe mood swings. And so some of the side effects of these procedures, now that I've studied for over many, many years since that time, some of those changes are depression and mood swings and emotional and mental changes. And also because there is a direct connection between our vaginal area, our reproductive organs, our womb, all that space, and the brain through the spinal cord. That's how it, because of neurochemistry that changes, and actually the physical trauma, the severe physical trauma that basically damages the nerves, the pelvic nerves, there are 3 pairs of nerves in there, and that all connects to the spinal cord and then the brain. And I actually know that, and I didn't know that it happens after the procedure. For many years.
I didn't know that either. I've never even had any clue that any of that was related in any way.
For many years, I thought it was because of the cellular changes and because of my medical condition.
Right.
And years later, I now discovered there are thousands of women all over the globe who are now reporting similar side effects from this procedure, and also many others. And we will go, if time allows, right, that there are many more procedures that I've now discovered working with women post those type of traumas, and also from research. There are a lot more procedures.
Can you name some of them? I think it's important to name some of them right now, if you have them off the top of your head.
By no means they're all the procedures that are there, but some, so as we said, the childbirth and the tears that happen, and also the purposeful incisions,
the episiotomy,
because it every woman's innervation of the organs is
Mm-hmm.
different.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people would say I had LEAP and other procedures, nothing happened.
Right.
But it depends on the innervation of every woman individually.
But how would they even realize, like, would people even connect it? Do you know what I mean? Like, I would never think like, oh, I had this sleep procedure and then, okay, a year later I have depression and mood swings. People are like, oh, I'm going through perimenopause. Oh, it's my birth control pill. Oh,
but it's not even a year later.
You know what I mean?
It starts right away.
I feel like people still might not connect it
yes.
in their conscious mind.
And I didn't know it was from LEAP. I now know it was from LEAP because I discovered that there are thousands of women reporting it. So
do you know what I heard in my mind? I heard in my mind when you were talking about the spinal cord and the vaginal space was epidural. For whatever reason, like that popped in really fast, like something about because that's where it goes, right? And they're very highly encouraged, needles, by the way. And they're not fully this is a great example of not having full consent, because all the information that's always out there is like, it's totally fine, it's perfectly fine, it's perfectly safe, there's no side effects, there's no problems. And then I can't tell you how many times I hear moms say, oh, I got the epidural and I keep having this nerve pain in my back, I keep having this nerve issue, I had this issue, I had that issue. And that to me is a side effect that is not shared. Or, oh, only one side of my body was numb and the other one wasn't, and it was really difficult to give birth. Or, oh, the top part of my body got numbed instead of the bottom, and then we had to have all these interventions so I couldn't breathe, or whatever it may be. And not to scare people or say shame anyone for any reason here. I don't talk about any of this stuff, and I'm sure you don't either, for shame, the purposes
because
of
if we are not informed, it's
for information and empowerment, right? So that we can take the power back and make informed choices. And yes, maybe you still want to get an epidural, or maybe you still want to get a procedure, but it's because you know all of the information, not just one section of the information that benefits going in the direction that you're being sort of shepherded into, if you will. So I'm sorry to interrupt there, but I thought that was important.
Yeah, there was, for sure. And the in the bulb induction, the Foley bulb induction that they use.
Yes, they tried to talk me into that. It was a hard pass.
Also from abortions, from IUD removal, or
implantation,
either when they're implanted or remove it. And basically from the procedures they have for endometriosis, the ablation, for the sling procedure, women who know what it is, they would know what it is.
I know what that is, but because I'm educated in this area.
And so basically, these are very few, but already enough.
That we're covering lots and lots of women.
Yes, hysterectomy.
Okay. Wow.
All the removals of, basically removal of any parts or organs in that area. But even without removing or scraping, all the biopsies and cone biopsy and even the procedures that test
I got a biopsy when I was 21. Because of HPV situation that at the time, my body has since then totally taken care of all of it. I've never really had any problems since that. But I remember seeing those scissors going up in there, and it was like, it didn't hurt, it was numbed or whatever, but I could like feel it still. I could just feel it happening. I could hear it. I don't know if that was my clairaudience that I wasn't aware of at the time, or if it really could hear it. But I vomited, I almost passed out. I don't know.
Super traumatic.
It was very traumatic for me. I'm very sensitive in my body. I don't take kindly to things being injected into me or put on in me.
And doctors do not warn you about, when I was having all this testing done before the LEAP happened, for LEAP, I had the full anesthesia, everything. A lot of women
I didn't have to get that one. Didn't have to get that. It wasn't recommended to me to get that one, thankfully.
So basically, I had it full-blown anesthesia in the operation room, but women have LEAP done, doctors have LEAP done left and right in medical offices. They don't warn you. They say, oh, it's just an easy procedure. We'll just clean the cells. Nobody gives you any consent, rather than if we remove a lot, you won't be able to carry the baby. But that's not enough. Knowing the type of side effects, all the physical, mental, emotional, creativity loss that happened to me. Because of
the second chakra, right? I mean, that's your joy and creativity.
Connection. The nerve
sensuality
with the brain.
and sexuality. I mean, if you look at it from a chakra perspective, which I tend to do, all of that second chakra stuff, it's boundaries, it's joy versus obligation, it's self-love, it's sensuality, it's all of that, it's being able to receive in that sort of divine feminine way, it's almost
and it disrupts the life force. All of that you're saying, totally.
Kundalini is there.
It completely disrupts that life force. Absolutely. And the woman starts from whatever procedures, and I gave some of the examples, but they're not limited to those examples. Basically, that unplugs the woman from that power, from the life force, from that the whole neurochemistry changes, the dopamine, the oxytocin, the opioids from sexual pleasure. It reflects in self-confidence, self-value, self-love.
Yes, that makes sense.
And basically, that's the story, that catastrophe, that I don't say it mildly. It was the rest, the following 4 years, I spent trying any possible treatment and any possible way, from conventional to alternative, to get my life back, get my pleasure back.
I want to talk to Lisa a little bit. She's saying that, so she's the one who said that she has the 2 traumatic premature births and the LEAP procedure last summer. She said that she has all of the symptoms that you just discussed about after the LEAP procedure, everything. And then said she only had a shot in the office and a panic attack from the epinephrine in the injection. And now is asking, how do we heal this? So I think that's what you're about to share. But it sounds like she's a perfect. Thank you for sharing, Lisa. I know it's not easy to talk about and share when you have these things happen to yourself. Thank you for stepping forward and talking about it. It's really beautiful and important work. And so, like how do we heal it? How do we?
So yes, since people are saying, how do we heal this? And basically, I came to hypnotherapy and discovered the power of this. And I am now knowing that it affects so many women. I not only do the quantum version of hypnotherapy and
like QHHT or something different.
I started with QHHT, but I don't do QHHT.
You don't do that anymore, but that's
because I found a lot of limitations of the method, and I was guided from the very time I got my certification to add, subtract, and completely alter. And I ultimately developed my method, and I work a lot more on the body. So basically, I have the medical trauma and working with women with sexual trauma and medical trauma as a second parallel type of work that I do overall. So what I believe happens, even if how we heal the medical trauma, we heal it by rewiring the neural pathways. We heal it by clearing the trauma out of the body. There is physical trauma that happens from this procedure onto the physical body. There is also emotional, mental trauma, such as all the panic, the shock. So that has to be cleared. Those negative emotional states and those negative body shock, spasm kind of sensations that need to be cleared. And with hypnotherapy, that's what I do. But it's only an aspect of the work, because what I have discovered in my own personal experience, and also working with women who had the diagnosis, and it's important to mention that the very reason HPV developed, the very reason that medical condition developed, was because of some energetic misalignment. and I discovered 4 prerequisites to why women who are, so HPV exists in most of the population.
It's
right?
like a cold, right? And like 85% of people are having or carrying it, right?
Yes. But some of us are more prone to the development of those cellular changes.
Right.
And I have a video, and if you would like me to share,
yeah, please share all your
later,
stuff all week.
So
that's why I made you an admin. Go for it. Yeah, do it all.
So basically, only some of the women who carriers of the virus, or whatever the cellular changes aggravate and develop into all the precancers and cancers and ultimately cancer. So I discovered there are several prerequisites why women will be prone to it. So it would not be in my integrity, and it would not be me to only treat the neurological aspect and trauma, the physical trauma, emotional trauma that happens,
right?
And not go for the root cause, because we need to stop the very reason why that virus.
What is HSV? Lisa's asking, along with HSV, what's HSV?
The simplex virus, the herpes.
I don't know. I'm not
maybe.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, maybe she can write. So, and also, yes, and herpes. People can, both the simplex, the first and the second version of herpes, right? We can carry if we get the virus.
Oh, yeah, right.
But some of us go for the actual symptoms or the cellular changes. So in that video that I'm going to share right after we finish on your page, with your permission, I go and explain why and how different types of trauma, such as, and those are the prerequisites that I discovered in my work with women with those issues, why they open up the woman for the developments to begin and continue to all those changes. Because if we don't have those prerequisites, if we are in alignment, even if we have the virus, it does not show up, it's dormant, or we don't have it, we don't get
that totally resonates for me
to begin with.
Absolutely. Like, I feel like when at that time in my life, it was because of a misalignment in relationship. I was very young. I was very early in my path, right? And I think that's part of also why, when I went back, by the time it got tested, I was no longer in that relationship, and it was like, oh, you're fine. So it's very interesting that you you bring it in that space.
And a big portion of my work is work with boundaries. And that video is going to be about how our psychological boundaries that are broken, that are absent because of various types of traumas, including childhood and family trauma, and sexual trauma. How that reflects in psychological energetic boundaries, and that women are more open. People who have, not only women, but people who have the different types of traumas are more prone to actually developing all these conditions. So I don't work on just the level of undoing the trauma once it happened. I always, in all my work, I go for the roots. Let's go, what is the imprint in your system energetically that opened us up? Those of us who go through this, what is it that opens us to those conditions to be developed? Because in alignment, in perfect, in our power, with healthy boundaries, when the traumas are healed, all of this is either dormant or absent. And so that's what I do. But it's not only sexual trauma and childhood trauma, even though women with sexual trauma and childhood trauma will be more prone to this because of the boundaries. But I also want to mention transgenerational trauma. And that issue with sexuality that is passed down, and femininity that is passed down to us transgenerationally.
What about religious trauma and how our sexuality is shamed? And I mean, that feels very strong. Certain religions, sharing with us, about the shame of our sexuality as women. And
that's what I mean by That's what I mean by the transgenerational, how it's passed down. It's
Yeah.
strongly influenced by the religion and sexuality aspect.
Yeah. That's the thing, and I'm also interested, this keeps popping into my mind, about how now there's such a big push for this HPV vaccine. Everybody wants everybody to get that. And it's like, I wonder how that's related to all of this. It's almost just a question that we can leave out there dangling for people to think about for themselves. But I just wonder, how does that come into play? And, how much consent is involved in vaccines, we know is very small, is informed consent, that is, the whole, as we know that a lot of the full information about them is not shared, only the very small information that is given. So I won't dive into a whole vaccination talk, but it did keep popping into my mind as we talk about this HPV. It's almost like this groundwork of laying it out that we all have to now have something it's another fear-based, it's something to worry about with it that can't be healed, it can't be protected against. It's we're all victims.
Let's talk about it. About the HPV, I will only share two things. I believe that it's important to do your own individual research and dig. And the second thing, a proposition, a suggestion. How is the vaccine going to work on the boundaries and traumas?
Right.
And how is it going to, okay, you will have the vaccine, but the root causes that actually there are so many strains of that virus.
Right. And what are the side effects, from a medical standpoint, really?
Even if we don't mention the side effects, the very
like, how will it help the core, the root of the issue, like that actually was there? It's almost like, how could
it's with any vaccines. Let's say the vaccine for cancer is found. Well, how is it gonna solve the root causes of the fact that there are negative emotions, there are traumas and internal and external conflicts that are living in your system and imprinting the sacred geometry that composes us, our energetic field in our body. How is any vaccine, any treatment medically, or how the Western medicine, well, let's just remove all the organs, the uterus, the ovaries, they remove everything, and the cancers still come back, and they come back more aggressive.
Right. Oh, I've saw it happen to my dad. Yeah.
Nobody goes to the root.
Yeah. Right. And it's about so much more than that. And so that's a perfect place to leave it. That's beautiful. It's just, it's something deeper, it's really something deeper than just putting a Band-Aid on it or trying to fix it in one little way, one thing, because it morphs, it changes, and it manifests again, and it manifests again
in a different part of the body, in a different part of the body, in a different
disease, maybe, right?
And usually stronger.
Right. Always. I feel like, not always, but yes, often, right? It's like, that's exactly the experience I felt like happened with my father's, he transitioned because of cancer. And so,
because the illness is nothing but the message from the body that there's a misalignment, there is trauma. I'm sending you the signals. Please pay attention to me. Please heal it. The subconscious, through the body's messages, are sending us the signals, and we are ignoring it.
And what about the work? Do you do this work with, like, say it's not medically focused, but just, victims of people who have experienced rape? Or molestation as children. Yeah. So that's also part of your work. Yes.
That's how I started.
Okay.
That's the beginning of all my work, even though I healed my physical issues. And that's how I was like, and not just the fact that in that expanded states of consciousness, I felt my whole body was rewired. And as I'm talking about it, I have goosies. I remember, I know to the time and the day when it happened, when the neurological aspect of me was rewired, and I was able to orgasm again after 4 years.
That gave me chills too. Yeah.
And that's when I stepped in my power, that all the chemistry, we are, after all, the chemical composition of our body affects our consciousness.
Right.
And so from one perspective, I was able to heal because I expanded my consciousness, and I learned the actual imprints that I had that
Mm-hmm.
affected and
Mm-hmm.
developed all the condition. So that's why I don't need to go for checkups. I don't live in fear of the virus, the changes that will take place,
Mm-hmm.
because I was scared to death. I was not given full consent. I was scared to death. I was not offered alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
Even after the procedure did nothing, because they did not even remove all the cells. I
Wow.
still was left with the same condition, with less of the affected cells, stuff on the, some part of my cervix
Wow.
was shaved off. I still had the issue.
Uh-oh, you just
Back to
froze.
square one,
You're back.
and I healed. So I
Mm-hmm.
healed, not because I had the
Mm-hmm.
surgery. This is when I decided, and this is what I work with women on, stepping into our power and taking the
Mm-hmm.
authority back,
Mm-hmm.
taking our power back from giving it away to
Feel
medical
that.
professionals who supposedly know better,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
listening to our bodies, going for those roots and solving and fixing and healing, bringing those,
Mm-hmm.
strengthening our boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
stepping into our powers, not to be in those abusive relationships that open
Right.
us up to the virus
And I want to
and
say this
transform.
isn't like medical professional bashing in any way.
Right.
It's not to put an us against them energy out there or anything like that. I mean, there's absolutely a place for allopathic medicine and Western medicine, and I'm grateful for it. And there are wonderful, amazing, beautiful people working in that field. However, there is a system and there are
Yes.
agendas and there is a limited amount of information, a limited perspective that is not always fully serving the highest good of all of us. And the highest sovereignty is that which we have with spirit and our own bodies. And if we can honor that and step into that power, and we can work in conjunction with, we can work in cooperation with and support one another within that space. It doesn't have to be
And
combat or
we can
yes,
prepare our
we
body.
educate ourselves and prepare our bodies. And it doesn't have to be, I think we come into this space where we get this knowledge, and I felt like this a lot, and I still sometimes it comes up, that rage, that Kali rage, that like I want to burn it down, man, like screw all this, like sometimes. But like when you first start to open your eyes to a lot of what's going on or what has occurred, right? You want to fight it and be against it or be angry at it. And it's okay to have those feelings. It's okay to honor those feelings, but it's really
And work
important
through them.
and work through them. And it's really important that we see them and then we utilize that passion to serve, to heal ourselves, to present information, to empower others, to use it as bravery and courage to have a live conversation about things that maybe aren't going to be received by every single being in the same way or whatever it is. So I think that's just really important to come around, to don't try to push that anger down or to try to use it to hate, but to use it to empower ourselves, to honor ourselves, to bring forward that strength and that information and that light, to it so that it can be healed and transmuted and not just creating more of that anger and fear, so.
And it's very important. Thank you so much for bringing it up. I personally believe that without the struggle, without this medical condition, without this journey and the story, without learning this empowerment and giving the power away and believing in the greater, whatever medical profession and science, and giving my power away, not listening to my body, not doing enough research, not listen. We are not taught as women to listen. Nobody's taught to listen to our bodies and
I
our
feel that we're
intuition.
taught to ignore and taught to stuff down, taught to talk to, I don't know if anyone's watched the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel series on Netflix, Amazon Prime, but she's a comedian starts out in the 50s and 60s, and she's really dirty. She talks about, all kinds of taboo subjects and this and that in her in her stand-up. And there's this one very powerful scene where she's up in a club, and she said penis and dick and all this stuff. And she talked about sex and she's talked about all kinds of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Totally over the top. And she starts talking about pregnancy and giving birth. And they come up and they yank her off the stage. And the guy's like, you get out of this club. Like, you're never coming back here. You're blackballed. Like, you can't say those words there. And she's like, which one? And she rattles off like 25 foul words she said. And like, all of these words. And he was like, pregnancy. You can't say pregnancy. And she was like, what? Like, are you kidding me right now? And it's just like, it's like, we are so conditioned to hide ourselves, our body parts, the absolutely natural things. I'm a breastfeeding advocate. I'm going to take my boob out anytime I want. I'm going to breastfeed my kid anytime they want for as long as they want. And that's what it's going to be, because I won't be shamed into hiding my body or hiding the fact that I'm a mammal. And that I'm providing food for my baby. And that's a beautiful thing. It's not dirty or bad. It's okay for it to be on a billboard outside of, Victoria's Secret. It's okay for our breasts to be used in pornography and or whatever, to be sexualized in every way, but it's not okay for my body to be utilized in its God-given sense. Naturally, right? Yeah. Right. So we're just taught to suppress and hide and shame and put it away. Don't talk about it as dirty. It's gross. It's smelly. Put perfume all over your private parts and give yourself yeast infections all the time with fragrance, because that's what we're meant to do to our bodies. No, like, that's inaccurate. And it's what we're taught, and it is transgenerational. We're taught, and it's passed down, and it's passed down, and it's passed down, right?
And it's subconscious. So all the transgenerational trauma. The transgenerational trauma is the reason it's so in there and it's so persistent and it's passed down over and over down the past generations, is because it's subconscious. It's not possible to heal it in the level of analytical mind and talking. And so a huge part of my work is transgenerational
Makes a lot of
healing.
Sense.
Yeah. And to finish my topic, that I believe I went through this journey to learn what true power is and empowerment. And so not to bash and trash and put someone against,
Right. It's gratitude, really, ultimately.
It's not gratitude. I wouldn't wish it be. But it's the higher bird's view of my soul that I know that because of diving deep into that very dark and painful territory and coming out, I now am able to serve. And I had a near-death experience, and I've had visions since that time, when I know the day when I was rewired. I had visions of women holding hands, and I didn't know back then. I was resisting the whole hypnotherapy world transition. I worked with special needs children for 10 years. I always knew that was my drive, but I didn't know how I'm going to get there. And so I saw the visions that I will be working with women. I work with men, but I work with more aligned men who are ready to say goodbye to those systems and toxic, agendas and control. And so I've gone through this, and we go through this to learn what is true empowerment. And but to mention on the medical topic, I believe it's necessary, not to make the camps and oppositions, but medical professionals don't warn us about it because they don't know about it. Right. And I'll explain why. There's no information about the pelvic nerves and the innervation of the cervix up to this day. Only starting 2015, there was a study in 2015 and 19, they mapped the vaginal area, the cervical area, and they now finally talking that, hey, cervix has nerves. But if you go to doctors in the medical schools, they say that you're not supposed to feel that. There are no nerves in the cervix, and there are no nerves. And so they wouldn't give you consent, because even the doctors who are in their highest service and their highest good, doing their work, if they're not educated, how would they give you full consent? And there are not enough studies. There are a lot more studies on sexuality and reproductive system and the well, orgasm and pleasure for men than for women.
Right.
Significantly by numbers. There's a huge gap. And when men have their surgeries, anything related to reproductive system, the surgeries are done in a way where the function of the organ is saved.
Right.
They do the surgery around so they don't interfere with the nerves. Nobody does that for women. And this is what we need to come into power about, and demand more research, demand more more information like that, research like that.
Yeah. Right. And teach it. I mean, but it goes all the way back. It is transgenerational. Like, who wrote these textbooks? Who did this in the beginning? You know, like in the beginning, there's a certain intention, you know, of who's being included and who's being honored.
Thank you so much for this comment.
You know, and so it continues and it continues. And so, you know, it's part of our sacred work to just, you know, kind of be like, you know, can include me.
Yeah. And let's go there. Yeah. The system was never built by women. Right. Was never built with women in mind.
Right.
And it was never built for women. And I don't know if you know much about how gynecological field overall developed. Not to mention even how the midwives were basically their services were made illegal, and now the labor became the medical thing, like it's a disease, and it became illegal in multiple countries. But also the very practices.
I did hypnobirthing, so I got a little bit of that in the hypnobirthing education.
But the very practices, the gynecological practices, the stirrups and everything was done. It was all the surgeries and procedures were practiced on slaves without anesthesia. The stirrups were meant to hold the feet. It was torture. It was never made for women, with women in mind.
Yeah,
and
it's really emotional.
And it's very silly to suspect that it changed with those kind of beginnings, and all of a sudden it just miraculously started.
Right. And now it's cool. But maybe it will be as we continue to move forward with education and using our voices and speaking up in these ways that are hard. You know, they're hard for people to share about this stuff. And there's a lot of gaslighting, you know, that occurs in a lot of this, in a lot of all of these topics, you know. And it's to your point, it's not these horrible people who are trying to give false information or exclude things on purpose. It's what is taught. It is what is it's so much of it is institutional.
Yes.
You know, and so, you know, it does help me to kind of see it as a bigger, more historical thing. And we're beyond our time, but I could feel like I could talk about this for like 3 hours. But you know, it's beyond that. And it does help me with seeing heart to heart, seeing compassion, and not thinking like this doctor's out to get me, or this OBGYN is bad, or because it's really not, it's not that simple. It's bigger. And it's coming from, you know, it's almost like if a person is a really, 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 really good doctor, then that worries me the most because they have the most of that institutionalized information, you know, like it's almost like doing their best is getting so much of that information. And so it's the people who are brave enough in those fields to step out and look at the whole perspective. And look at all the different, and there are people, absolutely.
There are a couple of doctors in the States, and in San Diego, there's a doctor who's researching the damage from LEAP and supporting women, but most of the medical establishment right now denies.
Right, and they will blackball them, and they will, you know, it's the same thing with the birth stuff, which we, you know, as doing the doula training, I'm not a practicing doula, but just doing the education, the training portion of it, a lot of what was learned was that, you know, the doctors that have spoken out, you know, the ones that do come up, and you see this in other controversial topics as well, that they become blackballed, or they can't work, they can't practice. Insurance won't cover them. You know, if, you know, with the vaccine rates, if the office doesn't have a certain amount of compliance, they just won't get covered. The insurance will just drop them. And what are they? That's their livelihood. Like, that's their life. That's their kids. That's their mortgage. It's, you know, it's not they're this evil person, you know,
there
it's
is
just
money involved. There is money
follow the
involved.
money is my,
And also
follow
the
the money.
leap procedures done left and right, as I said, in offices, because it's a lot of money. And coming back to important thing, that there are alternative treatments. We're not saying to leave the abnormal cells untreated, but women are not warned that there are turmeric, green tea, and other extracts, and different other treatments, published studies about those treatments that can be offered as an alternative before the intervention. There is also a study that kind of longitudinal study that looks at overall, I think like 60 years of different studies of actually what is the risk of the abnormal cells developing without treatment into cancer. And that rate is small, but the doctors don't tell you this. They will scare you to death because of numerous reasons that we discussed today. And because of the whole fear programming, look at the coronavirus, everything is dangerous. Nobody teaches you that life is not dangerous. Everybody teaches you that life is out to get you. And this conversation would not be a full if we don't talk about the very roots of it. That it's not just that the system is bad or the doctors are bad or the doctors are good. Is that for thousands of years, humans have been giving their power away, first to religions, and then the money system came about, and then the science became the new religion. And so all these institutions and systems,
politics,
and the giving away power and responsibility, including for our life and health. Nobody is raised, and transgenerationally it's passed, that we look up to that science and the doctor who's supposed to know better, and we are not empowered. Nobody teaches us to be empowered and know that diseases don't just fall on us, and they develop because of some misalignment and traumas. And if we heal those at the root, then we can correct all that, and we don't need to give our power away. And this is what I do with the women I work with, well, with anyone I work with, but particularly with reproductive trauma, medical trauma. That would be
so we're going to wrap up now, since we both have a stop, but I would love for you to share, you know, where we can find you, and if you have any kind of special that you want to share with my group, with our group MDL, Multidimensional Living, like you're welcome to do that, and you don't have to do it now. You can just post it later. If you know, whatever you'd like to do, whatever you'd like to leave us with now, please do that before we say goodbye.
So I would first of all would like to finish on a good note, that we are heading to this empowerment if we choose to.
Yes, we are.
And there are methods to treat trauma without being re-traumatized. I use methods that you don't need to go and re-experience the trauma. By no means, we don't do that. We can heal trauma and also expand consciousness in those hypnotherapy states, in those expanded states, with those quantum states. We can shift the overall perception, not just heal trauma. We can get empowered. We can find and step into our power, our soul power. And it's possible, and I see it all over and over and over again. And all those tragic negative consequences of those medical interventions are reversible, and I'm the living proof of it. And I know women who have reversed it, and I'm helping women to do this with my work and education. And I would like to offer to, first of all, if anyone watching this video, if you're a woman and you had an aha moment that this is my story, that this is what happened to me, because I had that aha moment when I discovered it was not because of the cancerous changes, it was the procedure. I would love you to know that it's all reversible, and we not only we heal the neurological part and rewire and reawaken the pleasure, but we also can heal the roots. So this does not happen over and over again. So we actually can heal it permanently. And I would like to offer a 30-minute free conversation for any women who have any questions.
That's beautiful.
you can contact me at contact@tatianavilarea.com. I'll put it
Yeah.
somewhere
Post it
there.
out, post it up, share all the
And
things.
answer any questions. I'll share any information I have. I am here to share this information and empower us ladies so we can shine.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this conversation, this
Thank you
brave
so
work that
much.
you do, and all that you are working to shift and bring forward for divine feminine and for all of us, and for divine masculine, right? Because we suffer together.
Yes.
We suffer
and if
together.
there are any women,
And we
if
rise,
there are
this
any
makes me emotional.
men,
We rise together too, you know?
and if there are any men who are watching us and they might think that this is what happened to any ladies, mothers and sisters and spouses and girlfriends, please share this information. We will make it available outside of this group somehow, right? And share this information so we can.
Yeah, I'm going to record. I did record this, so I'm going to send it to you in an email, and then we can, and I'm going to create a YouTube, surprise everyone, I'm going to have a YouTube channel one of these days. And I'll be posting up all of these when I get to it. So absolutely, we will make it available. So thank you.
Thank you.